She had spent 3 years learning not to believe compliments. The dress was dark green, chosen by a 7-year-old who saved 2 weeks of pocket money because she thought Claire deserved something beautiful, and Claire had put it on anyway, because you don't say no to a child who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Marcus Hayes was standing in the hallway when she came out, sawdust still on his hands, something flickering in his eyes that he hadn't planned for. "You look beautiful." The words came out like he hadn't meant to say them. She smiled into the mirror. "You lied." But the man who hadn't said anything unnecessary in 6 months and never once reached for pretty words had just left 2 faces with nowhere to look. What came next would cost them both more than 1 honest sentence, and less than either of them feared. Marcus Hayes built things with his hands because he no longer trusted himself to build anything else. 6 years ago, he had been a licensed architect at a firm in Denver, drawing floor plans for other people's lives. Open kitchens, wide windows, enough light to make a room feel like a promise. Then Rachel died on a Tuesday in November, on a road he had driven 100 times, and the life he had designed collapsed in a way no blueprint could address. He sold the house in the suburbs, moved into a smaller apartment on the east side of Reno, closer to his mother, closer to Lily's school. Quit the firm, started taking carpentry jobs from Pete Navarro, who lived downstairs and always had more work than hands. People asked if he missed the architecture. He said no. That was the second lie he told after Rachel died. The first was telling Lily that everything was going to be fine on a morning when he wasn't sure it was. He was 39 now, and the apartment had taken on the particular order of a man who controlled what he could. The kitchen counters were clear every morning. Lily's lunch was packed the night before. The tools in the back workshop were arranged by size along a pegboard he had built himself, each one outlined in pencil, so he always knew what was missing. He was not a tidy man by nature. He was a man who had learned that small systems kept larger things from falling apart. The one exception was the linen apron hanging on the hook beside the kitchen door. Sage green, soft with washing, with a small coffee stain near the hem that had never fully come out. Rachel had bought it at a farmer's market in Boulder early in their first year of marriage because she said the color looked like mourning. Marcus had never worn it. He had never moved it. Lily had stopped asking about it years ago, and the 3 of them, Marcus, Lily, and the apron, had arrived at a kind of silent arrangement that none of them had chosen exactly, and none of them saw a reason to disturb. Lily was 7, which meant she said everything she thought and understood more than she let on. She had her mother's dark eyes and her father's habit of going quiet when something mattered. She had also developed somewhere in her short life strong opinions about interior design, the correct way to fold a blanket, and which adults in her orbit were paying enough attention to themselves. She had decided early that Claire Donovan was not paying enough attention to herself, and she had taken this as a personal project, in the way that 7-year-olds take on projects, without announcement, without a plan, and with complete conviction. Claire Donovan had moved into the spare bedroom 6 months ago under circumstances that were practical and a little humiliating, which was how most necessary decisions felt in the months after Jordan. She and Jordan had shared an apartment for 2 of their 3 years together. His name on the lease. Her name on the utilities, a domestic arrangement that had felt like partnership at the time, and felt like a trap the morning she found the texts. She didn't make a scene. She was not a scene-making person. She packed what was hers over a weekend, while Jordan was at his brother's, left her key on the counter, and called her friend Meg from a parking lot because she had nowhere to go and was not ready to say that out loud to anyone who knew her well. Meg knew Pete Navarro from a cycling group, and Pete knew Marcus Hayes had a spare room and needed someone reliable for the rent. And by the following Saturday, Claire had moved in with 2 suitcases, a box of books, and the specific exhaustion of a person who has been holding themselves together for so long that arriving somewhere feels less like relief and more like the moment you finally set down something heavy and discover your arms are still shaking. She had expected the arrangement to be temporary, 3 months, maybe 4, until she found her footing and signed her own lease and put her own name on something. But 3 months became 4, and 4 became 6, and somewhere in that time, the spare bedroom had stopped feeling like a waiting room and started feeling like the only place in 2 years where no one had required her to be a particular version of herself. Marcus didn't require anything. He was courteous and self-contained and asked almost nothing. And after 3 years of living with a man who had an opinion about everything she did, that quality in Marcus felt less like indifference and more like the first full breath she'd taken in a long time. She worked from home as a freelance editor, kept her door mostly closed during the day, made coffee at 11 and again at 3, and moved through the apartment with the careful efficiency of someone who had learned not to take up too much space. She put nothing in the living room. Her books stayed in her bedroom. Her coat went on the hook inside her door, not the shared rack in the hallway. She kept her half of the bathroom counter immaculate. She understood, behaving like someone who expected to be asked to leave, not because Marcus had given her any reason to think that, but because the expectation had become a habit she hadn't yet figured out how to break. Marcus noticed all of this without meaning, to the way you notice the shape of a room when you've been living in it long enough. He noticed that she laughed easily at Lily's jokes and carefully at his. He noticed that when she received a compliment, she always looked down first, like she was checking the ground before she stepped on it. He didn't ask about it. It wasn't his to ask, but he filed it away in the part of his mind that cataloged things he could not fix with his hands. The first time Marcus noticed he was paying more attention than a landlord should, it was an ordinary Wednesday in December, 2 months after Claire moved in. He had come in from the workshop at dusk, hands cold, to find Claire at the kitchen table with her laptop and 3 manuscript pages spread out around her, a red pen behind her ear, and her coffee gone cold at her elbow. She was so absorbed in what she was reading that she didn't hear him come in. He stood at the sink washing his hands and watched her reread the same paragraph twice, then uncap the pen and write something in the margin with the swift certainty of someone who knows exactly what's wrong and exactly how to say it. He didn't know why that particular image stayed with him. He made dinner. He called her when it was ready. She came to the table and ate and talked to Lily about school, and Marcus went to bed at 10 and lay awake for 20 minutes, thinking about a woman he barely knew, reading a page he would never see, and the way competence, when it is quiet and unannounced, is its own kind of striking. The second time was in January. Lily had a bad night, the kind that arrived without warning, all tears, and no clear reason, the way grief sometimes resurfaces in children at inconvenient hours. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed for 40 minutes, talking about nothing useful, which was usually what worked. When Lily finally settled, he came out to find Claire in the kitchen doorway, clearly awake, clearly having heard. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't offer anything. She just looked at him in the half-dark of the hallway with an expression that said, "I heard, and I'm not going to make you explain it." And then she went back to her room and closed her door quietly, and Marcus stood in the kitchen for a long moment, with the feeling that he had been seen in a way that required no performance in return. He did not examine this feeling closely. He went to bed and got up at 6 and made Lily's lunch and went to the workshop. And he filed that image away with the other one in the part of his mind he was not visiting on purpose. The third time was in February, when Lily dragged Claire into the workshop on a Saturday to see the console table Marcus was building. Lily had appointed herself unofficial tour guide of her father's work and took this role seriously. Claire stood in the workshop doorway looking at the half-finished table, the knotty pine, the careful joinery, the legs still rough at the base, and she said without any decoration, "It's going to be beautiful." Barm, not "that's nice," or "what's it for?" or any of the things people said when they were being polite about something they didn't understand. Just a direct statement the way she made direct statements about manuscript pages. Marcus had looked at her, and then looked at the table and said, "Yeah, I think so." And Lily had said, "I told you she'd get it, Dad." As if this confirmed something she had already known, and Marcus had picked up his sanding block and gone back to work because it was the only reasonable thing to do. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in March, white envelope Jordan Price in the return address corner, the name sitting on the counter like something that had followed her from a previous life. Marcus saw it when he came in for lunch. He left it alone. Claire opened it Wednesday evening standing at the counter and read it twice without moving. Then she said to the window, "My ex is getting married Saturday." Marcus set down his pencil. She had her back to him, and her shoulders were doing the thing where they looked relaxed, but weren't. "The woman he started seeing," she said, "while we were still together." She said it the way people say things they have rehearsed until the feeling has been mostly drained out. Marcus didn't say he was sorry because she wasn't asking for that. He didn't name what Jordan sounded like, though he had a word for it. He said, "You going?" Claire turned around. She looked at him for a moment, like she was trying to figure out what kind of question that was. "I haven't decided," she said. Marcus nodded and picked up his pencil. Later that night he lay awake thinking about the way she'd said while we were still together, the careful flatness of it, and what that kind of careful costs a person over time. Lily found out the next morning. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, while Claire was staring at the invitation over her coffee. "Whose wedding?" she asked. "Someone I used to know," Claire said. Lily climbed onto the kitchen stool and considered this with the gravity she brought to most important questions. "Are you going?" "I don't know yet." Lily thought about it. "Dad says you should only go places that make you feel like yourself," she said. Then she asked if there was cereal, and the conversation moved on, but Claire sat with that sentence for the rest of the morning in a way that had nothing to do with the cereal. Thursday. Marcus spent the day at Pete's job site framing shelves into a laundry room. The work was simple, and his hands knew what to do without him, which left too much room in his head. He kept thinking about the invitation, not because it was his business, but because it had been 2 days, and Claire still hadn't said yes or no. And in his experience, people who couldn't answer a question they already knew the answer to were usually fighting something older than the question itself. He drove home at 5:30 and found Lily doing homework, and Claire's door closed, and the apartment holding the particular quiet that isn't peaceful. He made dinner. He called Claire when it was ready. She came out in socks and a sweater with her hair down, sat across from Lily, and ate pasta, and talked about Lily's state bird project, with the full, genuine attention that Marcus had noticed was one of Claire's best and least advertised qualities. Lily asked if the California quail was a good bird. Claire said she thought it had an underrated sense of style. Lily took this seriously. Marcus watched the two of them and felt something shift incrementally in his chest, the way a drawer that is always stuck sometimes moves an inch without warning. He did not name what shifted. He washed the dishes and went to the workshop for an hour and did not think about it mostly. Friday arrived with a pipe problem. Pete called at 7 to say the unit below had a slow leak tracing back to Marcus's bathroom, and he'd need to come up with a plumber. Marcus spent the morning clearing out the cabinet under the sink. By the time Pete and the plumber had come and gone, it was nearly noon, and the job on the east side had lost its window. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a materials order he hadn't finished. The apartment was quiet in the way it was. Only when Claire was in her room, working a low hum of occupation, the occasional sound of a chair, the soft percussion of typing that had become over 6 months as familiar to him as the sound of the workshop in the mornings. He worked through the order. He made lunch. He made enough for two, put half in a container, and wrote a note in Lily's handwriting badly with the wrong crayon, because it was the only one on the table, and left it on the counter outside Claire's door. Then he went back to the table and did not examine why he had done that. Claire came out at 1:30, saw the container, read the note. She stood in the hallway for a moment. Then she came to the kitchen door. "Lily's not here," she said. Marcus looked up. "I know. She doesn't write in red crayon. I know." Claire looked at the note again. Something moved through her face that she didn't name, and neither did he. She took the container back to her room. Marcus turned back to the materials order and realized he'd been looking at the same line for 10 minutes. The previous week, Lily had pulled Claire into the second-hand shop on Elm Street, one of her regular stops on the walk home from school, a habit Marcus had tried and failed to discourage, because Lily had strong opinions about second-hand furniture and its potential. Claire had gone along the way. She always went along with Lily's projects, with genuine attention and no condescension. Lily had stopped at a rack of dresses near the back, flipping through them with the concentration of a professional buyer until she stopped at a dark green one in Claire's size and held it up. "This one," she said. "The color is so pretty." Claire had looked at it. "It's very green," she said. "The best green," Lily said. "Like the apron in our kitchen. Dad always looks at that color." Claire had gone still for a moment that Lily didn't notice, and Marcus, hearing this story later from Lily, felt a specific feeling he declined to examine. Claire had bought the dress. It cost $11. Lily had contributed 4 of them from her allowance without being asked, and another 3 the following week when Claire was at the grocery store, pressing them into Marcus's hand at the kitchen counter and saying, "Don't tell her I paid more. She'll make it a whole thing." Marcus had put the money in his shirt pocket next to the folding ruler and said nothing, which was, as Lily well knew, his version of a promise. Saturday morning. The wedding was at 2. Marcus knew this because the invitation was still on the counter, and he was a man who noticed details whether he meant to or not. Lily left with his mother at 9, cheerful and loud, wearing rain boots despite the dry forecast. By 10, the apartment was quiet. Marcus went to the workshop. He had a knotty pine commission he'd been putting off the wood, difficult, requiring patience he wasn't sure he had. He worked until 11:30, sanding the same stretch of wood 3 times because his hands wouldn't settle. At noon, he came inside washed up and stood in the kitchen. He took the folding wood ruler from his shirt pocket, the one with RH carved inside Rachel's initials. Her handwriting in the wood from the week he left the firm, her way of saying you built things before, and you'll build them again. He held it for a moment. Then he set it on the table. Made 2 sandwiches cut. Fruit. Put it all in a container. Left it on the counter with a glass of water beside it. He didn't knock on Claire's door. He didn't leave a note this time. He went and sat in the workshop doorway where the light was good and read the same page of a magazine 4 times. He heard her door open at 12:40. He heard the particular silence that meant she had found the food. A few minutes passed. Then he heard her in the kitchen, the sound of a cabinet opening, a glass being filled. He didn't go in. At 1:15, he came inside because it was hot in the doorway, and he was out of reasons to stay there. Claire was sitting at the kitchen table in the green dress. The food was half-eaten. She was looking at the window, with her hands flat on the table like she was steadying something. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. She didn't look up. He could see the line of her shoulders, the way she was holding herself together from the inside, and he recognized it the way you recognize a technique you've used yourself. He got a glass of water. He sat down across from her. He had nothing to do with his hands, which was unusual for him, and he set them on the table and left them there. The clock on the microwave moved from 1:15 to 1:20. Outside, a car passed with the windows down, music briefly filling the street, and then gone. Claire exhaled. "I got dressed," she said, "and then I sat in my room for 2 hours. Marcus said nothing. "I don't even want to go," she said. "I just don't know how to not go." He looked at her. She was still looking at the window. "What happens if you don't?" he asked. She was quiet. "I feel like I'm hiding. From him," she considered it. "From the version of myself that's still waiting for an explanation." That sentence landed without any help from either of them. Marcus turned his glass on the table. "You're not going to get one," he said. "Not cruel, not gentle. Just the truth stated like a measurement." Claire finally looked at him. "I know," she said. "I've known for a long time." She looked back at the window. The afternoon was moving forward without them. Then Claire stood up. She smoothed the front of the green dress with both hands, not nervously, but deliberately, the way you settle something before you commit to it, and walked to the hallway mirror. Marcus stayed at the table. He watched her look at herself in the mirror, not with vanity, but with the careful assessment of someone deciding whether they can go through with something. She touched the small gold earring at her left ear. She turned slightly to see the line of the dress from the side. She was, he thought, trying to look like a woman who was fine, and she almost managed it. And the almost was the part that was hard to look at directly. He stood up. He didn't know why. He came to the hallway doorway and stood there, with his hands at his sides, sawdust still on his forearms from the morning. And he looked at her in the green dress in the afternoon light, and the words came out before he had organized a position on whether to say them. "You look beautiful." Claire's eyes found his in the mirror. She smiled the particular smile of someone who has heard that sentence deployed too many times as a tool and has learned to receive it without letting it mean anything. "You lied," she said. Marcus didn't look away. "Lily saved 2 weeks of allowance for that dress," he said. "She picked it because the color looked like the apron. She told me she thought you deserved something that color." He paused. "I didn't mean the dress." The smile disappeared. Not in a bad way, in the way that something carefully constructed comes apart when it's no longer needed. Claire looked at him in the mirror for a long moment. Then she turned around and faced him, and he saw in her expression the thing he had been watching her keep below the surface for 6 months. Not sadness, not fragility, but the particular exhaustion of a person who has been managing their own perceptions of themselves for so long that being seen clearly without an agenda lands like something foreign and almost painful. "Jordan used to say things like that," she said. "Before, when he wanted something." She said it without bitterness, which was worse than bitterness somehow. Marcus held her gaze. "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't say it before." She was quiet. 6 months, she said. He nodded. 6 months, he said. "And I'm saying it now, because you're about to walk out the door in a dress a 7-year-old spent her allowance on to sit through an event designed to make you feel like you lost something, and you don't have to." Claire looked down. He watched her breathe. He watched her make the decision before she said it. When she looked up, her eyes were bright, but steady. "I'm not going," she said. The words were simple, and the effect was not. Something in her posture released not collapse, but the specific unburdening of a person who has just put down the version of themselves they were performing. She stood in the hallway in the green dress and looked more like herself than Marcus had seen her look in 6 months. He didn't know what to say, which was not unusual for him, so he said nothing, which was his version of giving someone room. She went back to the kitchen and sat down. He followed and sat across from her. They stayed like that for a while, not talking, not needing to until the front door opened, and Lily came in. His mother's knees had bothered her, and Lily had apparently decided with characteristic pragmatism that they should both come back and watch TV instead. Lily stopped in the kitchen doorway, assessed the situation, with the seriousness she brought to anything involving the 2 adults in her life, occupying the same room at an unusual hour, and looked at Claire in the green dress. You didn't go, she said. Claire shook her head. Lily nodded as if confirming a theory. Then she went to the kitchen counter and made a bowl of instant noodles with extraordinary concentration, carried it to the table, and set it in front of Claire with both hands. Dad makes this when things are bad, she said. I don't know how to make what he makes, but I know how to boil water. Claire looked at the bowl. Then she looked at Lily, who was watching her with Rachel's eyes, and Marcus's absolute refusal to be embarrassed about caring about something. Thank you, Lily, Claire said. You're welcome, Lily said, and climbed onto the chair beside Marcus and began explaining what she and Grandma had watched on television, and the kitchen, which had been holding its breath, began to breathe again. They ate together. Lily narrated. Marcus put bread in the toaster and sliced an apple. Claire ate the noodles slowly, the tension in her shoulders dropping increment by increment. Lily asked if she could be a flower girl at a wedding someday. Claire said she thought Lily would be exceptional at it. Lily said she knew, but wanted an adult to confirm it. Marcus said the competition would be limited. Lily said she didn't believe in limiting her ambitions. The kitchen felt like itself again, which was Marcus thought the best thing a kitchen could do. After lunch, Lily settled in the living room with a puzzle she had abandoned 3 weeks ago and now approached with fresh conviction. Marcus cleared the plates. Claire sat at the table with a mug of tea he had made, without asking, because she always had tea at 3 and it was close enough. He stood at the sink washing dishes, his eyes moving to the sage green apron on the hook beside the door. They rested there. Claire said from the table, Rachel's, he didn't turn around. She bought it in Boulder, he said. First year we were married. Said the color looked like morning. He heard Claire set her mug down. The kitchen was quiet, except for the water, and Lily's murmuring from the other room. Lily picked the dress because of it, Claire said. I know, Marcus said. He turned off the water. He dried his hands. He stood looking at the apron, the sage green, the coffee stain near the hem, the hook it had hung on for 4 years, without being worn or moved. Then he reached up and took it down. He didn't put it on. He folded it carefully the way you fold something you've been carrying a long time and have finally decided to set somewhere with intention. He placed it on the counter. Claire was watching him. He could feel it. He didn't explain. He reached into his shirt pocket and took out the folding wood ruler and set it on the table beside her mug. Then he pulled out the chair and sat down. They were both quiet, not the quiet of people who have nothing to say, but the quiet of people who have just said something without using any words. She saved her allowance, Claire said. Lily. 2 weeks, Marcus said. She said the color was pretty. She didn't tell me why she thought so. Claire looked at the ruler at the initials. She looked up at him. She told me, Claire said. The green was like the apron. She said you liked that color. Marcus held her gaze. I didn't mean the dress. He said again, and this time it meant something different than it had in the hallway. Fuller, quieter, without any urgency behind it. Claire said, I know. Then she said, I've spent 3 years undoing the habit of believing what someone said when it cost them nothing to say it. She paused. You're not a man. It costs nothing. He didn't look away. I didn't know what to do with that, she said. So I called it a lie. That's fair, he said. It wasn't, though, she said. I know that now. From the living room, Lily called that the puzzle was impossible, and she needed assistance. Marcus called back that the middle section looked manageable. Lily said that wasn't helpful. Claire almost smiled. Then fully. It was the first unguarded one Marcus had seen all day, and he sat with it, the way you sit with something you didn't expect to be glad about. He left the ruler on the table. He didn't pick it up again. The afternoon settled into itself. Lily migrated to the living room floor. Marcus sat on the couch with a catalog he wasn't reading. Claire came out sometime around 4 in jeans and a sweater, the green dress exchanged for something that looked more like a Saturday, and she settled into the armchair with a book. Lily asked if Claire would help with the puzzle. Claire said yes and moved to the floor. Marcus watched them, his daughter's dark head, and Claire's bent together over the pieces. Lily explaining her system, which was elaborate and made no sense. Claire engaging with it completely, and felt the specific piece of a house that has been through something and come out the other side still intact. At 5:30, Claire's phone lit up on the coffee table. She glanced at it. Her face tightened just slightly at the corners. She picked it up, looked at it. Jordan's name was visible from where Marcus sat, but he looked away the moment he saw it. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she turned the phone face down without responding. A few minutes passed. She picked up a puzzle piece, turned it slowly, found its place. "He texted," she said to no one in particular. Lily looked up. "The wedding guy, yes. What did he want?" "He said I was making a mistake." Lily considered this. "By not going to his wedding. I think that's what he meant." Lily looked at the puzzle piece in her hand, with the expression she used when something didn't compute. "That doesn't make sense," she said. Then she went back to the puzzle with the finality of someone who has delivered a verdict and sees no need to revisit it. Claire looked across the room at Marcus. He raised his eyebrows just barely. She exhaled through her nose, not quite a laugh, but something in that family. She picked up her phone, typed a short reply, set it back down. Her shoulders dropped the same way they had when she'd sat at the kitchen table with the noodles. Whatever she had been carrying since Tuesday, she had just put it somewhere it could stay. The puzzle was abandoned at 6 when Lily declared it unsolvable, and Marcus said the middle section looked possible. Lily said, then he could do it. He did for 20 minutes while Lily supervised, and Claire made tea in the kitchen. When she came back, she brought 3 mugs chamomile for herself, the dark roast she knew Marcus took without sugar, and hot chocolate. For Lily presented with the same seriousness Lily had brought to the noodles. Lily received it without ceremony, which was its own form of ceremony. They sat Lily on the floor, against the couch, Marcus on the couch, Claire in the armchair, and the evening came in through the windows, the way it did in Nevada in early spring. Soft and unhurried, the light going gold, and then amber, and then quiet. Marcus looked at the folding ruler on the kitchen table visible through the doorway. He thought about Rachel at a Saturday market holding a green apron against the light. He thought about Lily at the second-hand store looking at colors. He thought that certain things get passed forward without anyone intending to pass them, and sometimes that is not a loss. Sometimes it is exactly the opposite. Lily fell asleep on the floor at 8:15 with a couch cushion under her head, a maneuver Marcus had never witnessed and could not explain. He carried her to bed. When he came back, Claire was in the kitchen washing the mugs. He stood in the doorway. She turned the water off and stood drying her hands, not in any hurry to go anywhere. "I left the ruler," she said. "I saw. It should probably go back in your pocket." "Probably," he said. He didn't move to get it. It sat on the table between them, the scratched wood and the carved initials, and neither of them needed to say anything about what it meant that he'd put it down. Claire hung the dish towel on the rack. She looked at the folded apron on the counter, not with sorrow, not with the careful tenderness of someone managing their feelings, but with something simpler. Acknowledgement. Like she understood that some things don't end. They just find a different place to live. She turned to go. Then she stopped at the kitchen doorway and looked back at him. "Thank you," she said, "for the food, for earlier, for not making me explain things." Marcus leaned against the counter. "You didn't need to explain them," he said. She held his gaze for a moment, the same clear, direct look she had given manuscript pages, the one that said, I see exactly what this is." And then she nodded once and went down the hall. He stood in the kitchen for a moment, then went and picked up the ruler and held it, running his thumb over the initials the way he had 1,000 times. He put it back in his pocket. He looked at the apron on the counter. He left it there, folded, not hanging, different from how it had been for 4 years, different in a way that was small and precise, and for the first time entirely deliberate. Sunday morning arrived without announcement. Marcus was in the kitchen at 6:45, moving quietly in the gray light. He made coffee. He set out 2 mugs without deciding to. The apartment held the stillness of early weekend mornings, Lily still asleep with the certainty of someone who has no doubts about being where she belongs. At 7:10, Claire came out in socks and her gray sweater, her hair still from sleep. She stopped when she saw the second mug. She looked at it. She looked at Marcus. He was at the counter with the puzzle section from the newspaper, which he never did, but had picked up anyway. She came in and sat down at the table and wrapped both hands around the mug. They didn't say anything for a while, not the nothing of 2 people being careful around each other, but the nothing of 2 people who have decided without meeting to discuss it that they don't need to be. Lily appeared at 7:45, hair catastrophic, 1 sock on and 1 sock carried, and climbed into the chair beside Claire and asked what was for breakfast. Marcus made eggs. Claire made toast. Lily told them about a dream involving a talking raccoon and a contested mayoral election, and the kitchen was loud with an ordinary morning. At some point, Claire stood up to get the butter, and Marcus reached past her for the pepper, and for a moment they were simply 2 people in a kitchen, navigating the small geography of a shared life, and neither of them moved out of the way faster than was necessary. Marcus set the pepper down. He picked up the ruler from the table where he'd left it again without noticing and put it back in his shirt pocket. Claire set the butter down. She looked at the folded apron on the counter. Then she looked at Marcus. "It still looks like morning," she said. "That color." He looked at the apron. He looked at her. Outside, the sun was coming through the kitchen window, the way it did on clear Nevada mornings, falling across the counter in a long, unhurried stripe. "Yeah," he said. "It does." Lily asked if there was orange juice. There was. The morning continued in the direction of itself, and no one in that kitchen needed it to be anything else.